This video is brought to you by ScaledWorld.net. If you want to get your build featured or check out some other awesome featured builds, be sure to head over to their Facebook page or their website to check it out and fill in that feature form. I heard a couple of you guys were building this one simultaneously with me, so I figured why not do a full how-to on installing these over fenders. It's actually pretty simple. They have an instruction in the manual itself. They have a one-to-one drawing of the actual body, so you can straight away copy their dimensions and the way they show it. So I just take a piece of masking tape, put it over their drawing, and then just outline the piece that I need to cut so I can transfer that onto the body itself. To transfer the outline onto the masking tape, I'm using a permanent marker as that doesn't rub off. A pen or a pencil could, but that's all up to your personal preference. When you have finished drawing the outline, you can carefully remove the tape from the instructions manual and then place it onto the body where it needs to be. So as you can see, when drawing the outline, I also drew a couple of the other body lines so I knew where to put those and to align it all nicely. If you can't really see through it, just hold it against a light and you can see through the tape a bit better to align it onto the body perfectly. So now that it's all aligned and perfectly in place, I removed some of the excess tape that I no longer needed. With the first corner done, I moved on to doing the exact same thing on the 3 other corners. With all 4 corners now copied from the manual onto the body itself, I could move on to test fitting the over fenders just to be sure that I didn't run outside of the over fender itself and therefore would remove too much of the fenders and pretty much leaving a gap between the over fenders and the body itself, which would look kind of weird. So just checking. Moving on from that, I removed the over fender again, took out a permanent marker, marked off around the edge of the masking tape that I put on, remove the masking tape, and I now have a perfect line of what I need to remove. And now you have a couple of options on removing this material. You could sand it off with a sanding stick or some sandpaper, maybe even a file, but you would need a lot of patience. I don't have that much patience, so I move on to doing it with my Proxxon. I have a Proxxon. You could also use a Dremel or another generic brand for a rotary tool and a cutoff tool to remove all that material in bulk. The other way you could do this is with a sharp knife, just cutting out some super thin strips one at a time until you're happy with the shape you have created. After removing the bulk of the material, I moved on to cleaning it up a bit with some sanding sticks just to make it nice and smooth and get rid of all those burrs. And I then of course repeated the same thing to the other 3 corners. Before gluing the wide body pieces on, I of course need to assemble some of the other pieces before that as they fit underneath, and the wide body also needs a couple of those pieces to be glued too. So the side skirts were put in place and then I added some glue, and I did the same thing to the front and rear bumper. With those pieces now all glued in place, I was ready to move on to the wide body itself. The front over fenders are pretty simple. You just place them and align them with the underside of the side skirt and also the body line on the front fender. I then just added a bead of glue to tack it in place, let that dry, and glue the rest of the seam around as well in a similar fashion. The others on the right and on the left rear were the same, and then I had to do the one on the right rear as well. That was a bit more difficult as I had to align it with both bumpers, the side skirt, and also the fuel filler cap, so I took a bit more time to figure that out and get it into place correctly, and then glued it as well. And that's pretty much it for the wide body itself. The final piece that I glued on was the rear spoiler. This is included in the wide body itself, of course, and therefore I included it in this video as it's part of this body kit. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe even learned something. If you have tips for me on how to do this better in the future, also let me know. I'm always curious to learn other ways of doing it. This video is brought to you by ScaledWorld.net. If you want to get your build featured or check out some other awesome featured builds, be sure to head over to their Facebook page or their website to check it out and fill in that feature form.